In October of 2016, WikiLeaks released the Podesta emails, over 20,000 pages of private emails from White House Chief of Staff John Podesta. This is the best example of an October surprise in our lifetimes. The Podesta emails opened the minds of millions to the fact that torturing children is a sort of sacrament to the vile creatures in control of our government. This 2016 October surprise became known as Pizzagate, and it was a deciding factor in many people voting against Hillary Clinton. Just as the Sean Combs child rape stories are dominating the public discourse, Hillary Clinton predicts an October surprise that will smear Kamala Harris, comparing it to Pizzagate.
What is something you see happening in the near future that we should be taking more seriously?
I anticipate that, something will happen in October, as it always does. I anticipate there will be a full court press in October. The digital airwaves will be filled. And why does that matter? Because the press that is pro-Trump anyway, oftentimes stories are put on digitally that then are picked up by, let's say, at Fox and others. And then those stories are stories, so the mainstream press reports on them, and so that story then takes on a life of its own. There will be concerted efforts to distort and pervert Kamala Harris, who she is, what she stands for, what she's done. The crazy story about me running a child trafficking operation out of a basement of a pizzeria, don't laugh. It was a huge story. It starts online, often on the dark web. It migrates. It's picked up by the pro-Trump media. It's then reported on by everybody else, which makes sure it has about 100% coverage. And people believe it. So I don't know what it's going to be, but it will be something, and we'll have to work very, very hard to make sure that it is exposed as the lie that it is.
It sounds like she is referring to the Sean Combs case, where hundreds of victims have already come forward, including dozens who were children at the time, and revealed that drugging and raping people in front of a crowd of famous people was a ritual event of the P. Diddy party.
Typically, the victim is lured into a situation where he or she is given a drink. Typically, that drink, reported by these victims, is apparently laced with something. Once that drink takes effect, the perpetrators perform all kinds of sexual acts on the victims, many times passing him or her around as other people watch and enjoy the show, and then leave the victim ashamed, confused, injured, and wondering what happened. The day will come when we will name names other than Sean Combs, and there's a lot of names. Anyone, of course, who engaged in the assault or exploitation, anyone who participated in such in any way, anyone who encouraged or facilitated this conduct, anyone who was in the room and watched it happen but made no effort to stop it, any venue or venue owner who was aware of what was going on but failed to stop it, any individual or entity who knew about the conduct and benefited from it but did nothing to report it or stop it, and any individual or entity who covered it up or helped cover it up. I would expect there are many people out there right now who are desperately searching their memories as they delete their texts and data.
That's quite a statement. The worst in 2 centuries. There are some periods of serious censorship in American history. Tell me why you fear this is the worst.
Well, I discuss this in my book, The Indispensable Right, that this is perhaps the most dangerous anti-free speech period in our history, because we've never seen an alliance like this of the government, corporations, the media, academia, all aligned in favor of censorship and blacklisting. The Biden-Harris administration has been really profoundly committed to that task. And Harris particularly has supported censorship for disinformation. Governor Walz has been out there saying that misinformation and hate speech are not protected under the Constitution.
It's absolutely true. Let's just illustrate what you're talking about. Harris and Walz pushing for censorship.
There has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
It's undermining the idea that mail-in ballots aren't legal. I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Professor, let's address those individually, actually. When it comes to Waltz, I've been a little bit confused whether or not he's just plain ignorant or he is pushing for censorship. As you point out, that's misinformation. He's also said the fire in a crowded theater line, that's misinformation. That's not the limitation of free speech in America. Hasn't been since 1969. However, Harris is saying there, she's openly calling for censorship. She is embracing it in a way that is brazen.
Yeah, and she's not alone. You have two former Democratic presidential nominees who have been going to the sort of global elite, asking for Europe and others to censor fellow Americans. Hillary Clinton did that after Musk took over Twitter, went to Europe and said, please use the Digital Services Act, this really horrific new law, to censor fellow Americans because Musk isn't going to do it, force him to do it. And then you had John Kerry recently going to one of these international groups and saying that the First Amendment's blocking us and these poor governments can't really censor as much as they would want. And that
here's the deal with Hurricane Milton, still projected to be a major hurricane, but even earlier now. This is Monday evening, and this is the biggest standout to me. 145 miles per hour. That is just shy of a Category 5. I want that to sink in and people to really hear what I'm saying. That is just shy of a Category 5. Now, thankfully, we are expecting some weakening once it gets closer to the coast of Florida, but we are really betting on that weakening here. 120 miles per hour still puts it at a major Category 3, maybe Category 4 still, just depends, by the time it reaches landfall. So this is not a good trend to see. The biggest trend, though, is going to be where that center of low pressure goes. Will it be to the north of Tampa? Will it be to the south of Tampa? If it's to the north, Tampa, this would be a significant storm, something that you have not seen probably for the latter part of 100 plus years, beating Helene. So put that into perspective as well. Tropical storm warnings are still in place for the Yucatan, tropical storm watches for Cancun. The hurricane watches and warnings are imminent at this point, especially for areas into Florida. So it's imperative that you continue to monitor the situation as it gets closer. Now's the time to prepare. Go to the sandbag sites, get sandbags, fill it into your home. Another thing to keep in mind that I was reading online, a lot of these self-service sandbag stations will not be open if there is adverse weather, like lightning. So keep that into perspective. We do have quite a bit of rain in these areas, so that could hinder some of the sandbags. So